Hey everybody, how's it going? Andrew here, and I just want to ask for a small favor, which is, if you're a fan of the show, then share it with someone you know. Seriously, if you like the content, the topics, the guests that we have here on the show, and feel that what we're discussing is really helpful and beneficial for you, great. But then all that we ask for is if you think that could also help someone else, then just share it with them. In whatever capacity, whether it's a community, online, it doesn't matter. If you just feel that this is helpful for you and others can benefit from the content, then it would just mean the world to us if you could share it with them too. So that's it. Again, can't thank you so much for being such great listeners. And now let's get right to the show.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Indie Game Movement, the podcast that talks about the marketing and business of indie games. I'm Andrew Pappas. I'm going to be your host today, and we're going to be talking about unleashing creative synergy in video PR. Now, in the realm of PR in games, navigating remote collaboration for tasks like trailer production can present a labyrinth of challenges. Maintaining creative cohesion and project vision with a remote team can be a daunting puzzle to solve, but it doesn't have to be. So today, we'll explore how one PR video lead tackles their team's remote collaboration challenges by discussing adaptive strategies for creative flow and how they find balance between autonomy and collaboration, offering real-world insights to unlock creative synergy in a remote work environment. So that's what we're going to be talking about right here today on Indie Game Movement. Hey everybody, and we're back, and today with us I have Emily Kolm. Emily, how's it going? And thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. This is awesome.
Yeah, it definitely is. And because, Emily here, for those of you who don't know, she's the video lead at Evolve PR, which is a really great, PR agency and everything. But Emily, if you could just take a moment and tell us a little bit about what you do there and maybe some of your past experiences and just let us get to know you a little bit more and base off of your career and everything.
For sure. So I am one of the leads at Evolve PR, and my team officially is called Evolve Originals. I'm sorry, my dog is crying a little bit in the background.
Oh, I don't even
she's
hear
fine. Okay, well, no, never mind. She's being perfect, and forget about it. So I'm one of the leads at Evolve PR on the Evolve Originals team. Evolve PR provides a ton of different services for indie developers and AA and I think AAA actually now alike, including community management, public relations, and as well our insights and terminals teams. I am one of the leads on the Originals team, which is purely video content for games. Okay. Primarily trailers, but we also do community content sometimes, supporting our community team themselves. So sometimes, developers want to have more specific or long form, highest quality possible videos that we support the community team with as well. So that's primarily my job. And it's to be clear, there are our team works a little bit differently. So there are 2 leads and a total of 5 people on my team. We work in a way where also tell me if my dog is crying too loud, and I will hear it, and I'll fix
I hear
it.
a little bit now, but she absolutely fine. I've dealt with a lot worse in the past, so you're all good.
She just hears people outside, and I can't wrangle her well enough out there, so she's gonna stay in here with me for now. So our team works a little bit differently. We've got several leads on the team too, me and Brendan. And then we have a video editor that works with us. And I've got a producer and a creative services manager, and that's the entirety of the Originals team at this point. We do work with, we outsource a bunch of people sometimes for different projects, but for the most part, it's producer, manager, leads, and editor. So what that means is that we independently are in control of our own projects, and we supervise the video editors that we work with as sort of and give them guidance and sort of act as a creative director for the project. So it's less. It's a very I find a sort of unique system that we've got where our team is less of a trickle down and more of a like group that sort of actively collaborates on everything, and then the leads are just the ones who are in charge of the final delivery, making sure that the vision is correct and to the client's liking, and sort of act as that last approval point before going to delivery. So
awesome. And I mean,
prior to the oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I just want to say one thing too, because you mentioned too about like guidance and stuff. I mean, and kind of, I think alluded to this too, but like, it isn't part of your role as well. Like, not just within the company, but you also lead like a lot of educational initiatives too, right? Like, what do those look like?
Absolutely. So Evolve as a company, one of our missions is to be really transparent on processes and, how we make things and how we approach work. So it's really important for us to knowledge share as much as we can. And so we produce a couple different things, such as there's our newest OG Academy, which is a little video series that we like to put together in between projects. We've got like our downtime and we've got hours to fill. So we put together educational videos on making trailers, which is sort of an untapped market of viewers that, maybe don't know where to start or how to do things. Making game trailers is such a niche within a niche that it's not very common to have only big agencies working on trailers. It's a lot of freelancers. It's a lot of independent people making them. And this is a niche that is, there's so little standard in games in general. I feel like in the industry in general, there's so little like cross standards. We sort of make it up as we go along. And with trailers, it's the same. So we, provide as much as we can to share with other indie developers or other trailer makers to just see like how we do things. And we think that it's a really important part of being really important to be part of the community that way, part of the game industry, game developer community in that way, and to share what we make and how we make it. And it's also really fun. I really like doing in particular behind the scenes videos are really fun to do. And then the developers themselves also really like it because then they can cross post and they can, share that among their channels, and their viewers tend to really, really enjoy it. So, in addition to that, I've also done, I was a guest lecturer at Toronto Film School for a little bit, talking to their video, or their editing, students, in their video marketing sort of unit. To come in and talk about like what makes a good game trailer and how to make, what goes into making a game trailer. And that is really fun for me. I like, that was probably like my doorway into education, like into educating. I find that, I've been doing this for a really long time. And so once you get to a point where you've been working at something for 12 years, you're like, okay, where do I go from here? I can just keep making cool stuff. Sure. Like that was my, that was my goal, my trajectory. But now I found a real passion in education. So I try to make that we've tried to make that on the originals team a really like a pillar of what we do. So.
Yeah, no, and that's amazing to hear, because I think sounds like it's just a good structure you guys have in place to really, promote like, learning and empowerment and just everything else that, what you said, that you mentioned that the team stands for, collaboration, and everything, and a little bit of what we're going to be talking about here too, obviously, but also to carry that, beyond into the community. It's just great to have all those resources and help, because it gets confusing doing all this stuff.
Yeah, I think so too. And, I remember being new to the industry and new at working as a adult human being. So there's not a lot of standards out there for us to follow, and not a lot of guides. And, games as an industry has a history of being very gatekeepy. That's not really the vibe anymore.
Yeah,
So we gotta educate each other somehow. So
love it. Well, thank you so much for sharing all that information. And but folks, before we get into the heart of the conversation, we're gonna get to know Emily a little bit more by having her go through the Q box round. So Emily, are you ready for the Q box round?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So first one is, what's a piece of advice you'd give your younger self when you were just starting in the industry?
Definitely don't take everyone's word as fact is one of the biggest one for me. And just like calm down across the board, just chill. When I was in school, so I went to the Art Institute of Vancouver for video game design originally in what year was that? 2010. So 2010 to 2012, I was studying. And when I started, the environment for not just developing games, but learning how to develop games in the industry as a whole was extremely hostile, especially as a young woman in the industry and trying to get into the industry. It was a lot of posturing and a lot of people taking themselves really seriously and trying to, what it felt like to me as a student was just trying to dissuade others from trying to join the industry. Like it was like a secret club that no one else should join, despite the fact that it was like an industry that it's budding and we want people to work in it and to make cool things. So I think that I listened to a lot of people's advice and opinions and took them as fact, when my mind should have stayed open, because this is an industry that is ever changing, ever evolving, and constantly, like, there's no way you can be an expert and know every single thing about every single thing, least of all when you are a student listening to other students or other instructors that come to us with, maybe their years of experience and which is totally helpful and valid, but not law.
Yep.
So I think that would probably be the biggest one for me, for sure.
Love it. All right, next one. What's your go-to strategy for overcoming creative blocks?
Okay, so I have creative blocks constantly. And so this is a really good question. I actually had it super prepared to go like, yep, this is the one thing that I tell everybody if they ask me, is I have a task bucket. Basically. So it's really hard for me to stay on task sometimes. And I find it really difficult to work on everybody I think does find it difficult to work on things when they're just like not into working on that thing today. So I have a task bucket in a notepad that just like lives on my desktop with things that I have to do. Like things that are going on in my work day that I have to work on regardless. And so client work stays at the top, of course, because those are the things that I need to do first and get out of the way. But maybe I want to work on this project today instead of that project today. And how does that work with my schedule this week? Does it work? Cool. And if I'm not in the mood yet in my day to work on a specific project, to sort of like warm up or get ready to get the creative juices sort of flowing, I'll just pick a task from my myriad of tasks I have in my bucket. Like, okay, I'll work on this process doc today, or maybe I'm working on an OG Academy video and I'll work on some of that today. Because I think finding, just feeling like what you're into working on at that time, you just get a little bit started and then the ball starts rolling. Because I feel like creativity is about, for me anyway, momentum. So it's hard to get started, but then once I pick it up, once I get the juices flowing somehow, okay, now I've got all these ideas sort of budding for my client work that I can get started on. And that's the biggest, that helps me every day.
And I love that process. And yeah, definitely thanks for sharing that one. Cause that's, that can be a big one for some people.
Yeah, especially if you struggle with ADHD like I do, or just like general motivation problems ever. Like it's a big one. You need the dopamine to start the engine, basically. And if the dopamine is low, you're just going to stare like at your screen until you're like,
It's not fun.
please do work. Please just do something. And it's really hard sometimes. So,
All right.
yeah.
Awesome. And then last but not least, and the staple here on the show, what game are you playing now?
So there's two that I have on my list. And for me, because I play games all day, every day sometimes. Like I'm in and out of game constantly. So it's difficult for me to like game in my free time because I'm like looking at games all the time and I'm playing them for work, and I'm trying to like get in, not just playing them as a player, but because I play them as like a creator and I'm trying to think about how to show off this game in its best light, I'm sort of looking at them with like a really intense lens. So it's really hard for me sometimes to find games that like are very relaxing in my free time because I'm constantly looking at them through this lens. However, there are two that stand out to me now, which is one, Dave the Diver, which is like a household name for me now because we've done almost their entire trailer campaign. My coworker Brendan is literally becoming Dave the Diver at this point. That's what we like to tease him about because he's on every single Dave the Diver project. And the other one is Relic Hunter's Legend. So we did a ton of really focused and targeted community videos for Relic Hunters, which made me spend a lot of time in the game. And I just like got really good at it as a result. And so now it's like, it's a really fun game to just have like short sessions because you can blast through these levels and it's fun and it's lots of colors and lots of action. And and the more you play, you like feel like you're really, really good at it, which is very appealing for me as a player because I'm like an ultra casual player, I feel like. Naturally. So if it's encouraging me like, oh, you're doing really good. You're doing better. And I'm so great at it. That's that's what makes me stay in in a video game for sure.
Awesome. Well, I mean, thank you so much for sharing all that. It's just really insightful and just really helpful stuff. So again, thank you for diving a little bit deeper into the Q box round. And speaking of diving deeper, now we're going to get into the heart of our conversation, folks, which is unleashing some creative synergy in video PR. And obviously can't think of a better person to ask you about this and everything else. So glad you're here to have this really interesting conversation because I know it's something that's important to you too, as you shared a little bit. But to kick things off, how has your team navigated the challenges of remote collaboration in games, especially in, PR, right? Especially let's say concerning trailer production, because I mean, there's so many integral and moving parts to this. Like, how'd you guys navigate this? Because that must have been tough when everybody's like, up and about, and now you got to do the same system, but different.
Yeah, so it's an interesting path for me because Evolve as a company has always been remote. They have never had a headquarters anywhere. They've always been fully remote for their PR, community, terminals, and insights and video production. And I was coming from a trailer agency that was non-remote, which is Fire Without Smoke, which is I get sad when I talk about it sometimes because I miss them so much. I really loved working with Fire. But Evolve has always been remote. And so for me adapting to, I thought it was going to be a lot harder, honestly, to work remotely. But at the same time, for me, it was like, it was right at the beginning of COVID. And I was like, okay, this is the world now. Like we're working remotely. We're at the cutting edge of technology. Like we're going to be fine. We can do this. If there is an industry that is prepared for remote working, it's ours. And so, hang on, sorry. I just got to go to my little note. Don't worry about cutting this out. I love it. What helps us collaborate effectively as a remote team is choosing projects that are in our scope that we can deliver realistically with the tools that we are proficient in. So it is true that for a lot of games, you really do need an in-house team to work on these games, to make trailers for them. So like obviously like really big name blockbuster publishers and developers, like you've got security on security on security. They're not going to work with a remote team. And that's totally understandable. Like you need everything locked down when you're working on those games, and it makes sense. And so that for that, you would need an in-house team. Absolutely. But other than that, like we have our, all of our rigid security measures in place working remotely for developers to keep their IPs and their materials safe. But a big part of making a, smooth and effective workflow is taking on projects and working with developers that really match with us. And so if, what they've got going, what they've got in production in the pipe is not going to suit the way that we do things, and we can't adapt, or we try to be as flexible as possible for these guys. Like how do you communicate best? Which platform do you want to communicate on? How, what are your hours? What's your working style like? Does your team work more in the morning? Do they work around the clock? Like, how can we be, how can we adapt to you? But sometimes it just is, it just doesn't fit. And being able to make a judgment call of like, we don't think we're going to be able to make, the best possible thing that you require. Like you need the best possible video, and maybe this isn't gonna work because of the needs that you have, or they're not gonna match, And I think that is, you need to be realistic in that sense. And you also need to be like, leave your ego sort of at the door with a lot of these calls. Like, yes, we love the project. We love you guys. We think that you guys are great and that we'd love to work on the project, but we think that the way that we work, it's just going to not be a very conducive, like, to creative working. And if we can't be sure that they're going to get a AAA result, then it's best to maybe give them other resources or other connections that we have to maybe get, to get their trailers, to get their video content from a team that maybe suits them a little bit better. Does that make sense? I feel like I talked super fast through all of that.
No, it makes complete sense. And I honestly, I just think it's a good thing to call out to, because a lot of times, especially as like whether you're a freelancer or an agency and you have these projects and clients that you're working with, and if you don't call out to those things, essentially what you're trying to do is trying to take a square peg and putting it into a circle, right?
Yeah, I think, and I know that like, it's what we do in providing services for companies and independent teams is, it is competitive, right? Like there's lots of, people in different agencies that do it, but like if we're having a race to the bottom doesn't really help anybody. It doesn't, and they're not going to get a good product, right? And what we want to see indie developers succeed and thrive, and we want to help them. And if we are signing on for a project that we know like isn't going to produce the best work that we can produce, it's not good for them and it's not good for us. Exactly. So we do have a very extensive like database of people that we work with too, other remote companies or other small remote teams or freelancers, like lots of people in our database that we can just hand, people off. And I think indie developers come to us a lot from, Evolve is an indie focused sort of company. Of course, our services can, address anyone. And we do also work, their PR specifically works with AAA companies as well. But in terms of video production, we really focus on indies and catering to the indie community. And so these guys are coming to us with lots of questions, because indie dev is like often one person. Yeah. We work with one person teams or bigger teams, and they're coming to us with questions like, I need a trailer. I don't really know how to get it. I don't, know what I need. Can you help me? And even if we can't make their trailer for them, we can still help them out in any other way that we can. It's really important to us to help them out.
Some good points there. And, just a moment earlier, you were talking about essentially, different ways to kind of adapt and be flexible within your means, right? Because you don't want to make continue working on a project if you realize it's not going to be a good fit as you outlined. But in terms of like, let's say, innovating that process a little bit, like, how do you, and you already outlined too, hey, Evolve has always been a remote agency and such. So with that in mind and kind of like innovation, if you will, how do you guys continue to come up with creative ideas and make sure that they flow seamlessly among not just like team members, but also with like clients as well? Because again, I mean,
right.
it could probably be a challenge to make all that magic happen.
Right. So like the golden ticket for remote working is scheduling and documenting. So we document all of our processes and as many processes as possible. And we have client-facing processes that we share at the beginning of the project, especially. So to make it very, very clear of like how we are working so that the developer or the client, I should start saying client, the client understands everything. Like it's so important for them to understand everything. We want to have a direct line of communication to the developers when we're working on the project in case we run into any issues in the build. We want to have that, the programming lead or the whoever is handling the technical side of things. We want to have direct line of contact for them. We want to have a direct line of content to the developers themselves to make sure that we're on the right path for them. When within reason, of course, it is truly a collaborative experience across the board, inside my team and between the team and the client. So we're documenting every single thing that we do. And if we come up with a new idea, a new way to do something, a document's coming right along with it. That's going to be, we're assuming client facing at some point so that they can be in the know with us. And scheduling absolutely everything. Like we schedule like this, our Google calendars are like Skittles. It's like a bag of Skittles because not only are we scheduling meetings and like, collaborative time, but we're scheduling our days as well. So like, this is going to lead into another question that you're going to ask me. It's the exact same thing, but like we're scheduling blocks of time on our own calendars to make sure that our calendars are up to date so everybody else's calendars can cooperate. So that's scheduling and documents and documenting processes, I feel like are the key here.
Yeah. And, it's super important too, because, the question itself, and I'm not saying, and please don't think that you weren't answering it. You definitely were. But the question was leading with, hey, how do you keep like that creative ideas and that flow and everything? And really, like we think about what, like we might look at that at face value. What is creativity and who knows, brainstorming or all anything that you might envision, right? But at the heart of it, it really comes down to that process, those structures, making sure that everybody's on the same page, they understand. Because if there's basically without having these things, it can create friction. And when there's friction, you don't have the creative flow and everything else because everybody knows, okay, this is the rules or the guidelines and everything else. And now that we have that established, we can let whatever come out. And that's where you get that creative flow. So I love how you called that out.
Yeah, I guess a good example of this would be like sometimes we have, it's really good like to cross collaborate with other teams. So we collaborate with community a lot and we collaborate with PR a lot. So especially if PR has a client that we share, we will team up with them, especially when it comes to the script for a trailer. So either the script itself, like a VO script, or the script itself in terms of flow and what the scenes in the trailer are. So like, here's our idea for a trailer. When you are reading through our script, our action script of first you see this, then you see this, then you see this, then you see a title card that says this. Does this read like this game? Because PR knows this game in a different way than we know the game, right? We know how the game operates. We can tell while we're playing the game, okay, as a player, I might be thinking this, I might be feeling this, I might want this from this game. That's our lens. And then PR's lens is taking this game and relating it to their audiences in terms of PR. So we team up with them a lot to read through our scripts to make sure that they are translating what the game is, and we're sort of aligning on that. And then they'll also read through our scripts, our VO scripts, or our calls to action. So like when you see a title pop up that's like, fight dragons, explore maps, like whatever, and like that. That's not just what we're saying, but how we're saying it and the words that we're using are fitting the vibe of the game. They're fitting the PR of the game as well. So that's a really good way that we collaborate. I think that setting up everything that we do in a way that's like, hey guys, what do you think about this? Posting it in the group chat on Slack or whatever in their channel or our channel, and just inside of our team. Hey guys, I came up with an idea. Could you check this out? Here's the document for my brainstorm. Do you want to add some comments? And we'll just jump in and add comments and whatever. And I think that's really effective too, especially in remote work, is just being like, okay, here I did a bunch of brainstorming for this game. Here's my brainstorm document. Here are the resources that you should watch before you go into the brainstorm document. Like, I don't know, their old trailer, a gameplay demo, whatever, and then jump into the brainstorm and just add your comments when you have time in between your schedule today, and then I'll check it out tomorrow, basically. So documents and scheduling once again.
Yeah, right. It goes right back to that. And I mean, it's really cool how you just outlined all that stuff, because it really, in a sense, like it just goes right into how they, foster creativity and that collaborative process. One I want to call out that I love is because I feel this doesn't happen as often as it should, but working with other departments. Like the fact that you guys, every studio, agency, whatever, can be set up differently. But if you have a department, like you said, PR is actively trying to communicate with that audience, but then maybe the messaging they found that you're not aware of, and it works really well with all their other efforts, then why not use that? So it's love hearing that, because I feel like a lot of this industry is still pretty siloed in a lot of ways. And
I agree. And it's not helpful, honestly. Like, I feel like that's a relic of like the time that when I was talking earlier about, and it's very 2010, I feel like, this sort of siloed off, like like little groups. It doesn't make any sense, honestly, like especially in a creative endeavor of any kind, to silo off your teams that are all working on the same thing. It doesn't make any sense. And I know that, we have producers for this that are meant to, when it comes to game development, you've got the producer or producers, hopefully, because they have to know everything that's going on all the time. Everyone's problem is their problem, right? But to have that representative that's going from team to team to communicate is really important. But in our field anyway, especially for a marketing team, like it really doesn't make sense to be anything other than completely collaborative, right? Because like all these different teams that are part of a marketing campaign are going to give you different information. And what's most important about a marketing campaign in any field, in print, video, whatever, is a cohesive message to communicate. And so if something's misaligned, not only is it not going to perform well and it's not going to reach the audience properly, but the audience are going to be confused and not want to play it. So it doesn't make any sense to come at it from that angle, an angle other than being completely collaborative. Yeah. Just FYI, my battery is at half.
Okay.
Just wanted to give you a heads up.
Excellent.
We're a little above half, and my power has not come back on yet. So just FYI.
Yeah, appreciate that. Yeah, folks, prior to recording, Emily had some last minute work done, of course, scheduled exactly at the time of her interview. So, but yes, I think we'll be able other Atlantic Canadians know what I'm talking about, getting that generator set up, because it's January and I live in Nova Scotia. So it's going to happen. Be cold and without power. That's for sure. So.
Yeah. A hurricane's going to hit at some point, like average Tuesday hurricane for us. And we're going to go out of power. So yeah.
So a lot of cool things there that you shared about, that whole creative and collaborative process. Now, one thing you shared with me prior to us having this interview like a few weeks ago, one thing I thought was kind of interesting is like that you called out to was saying like, hey, the fact that the level of independence that not myself but my team included is super helpful because of what we're able to do with the project, or like just it allows that like essentially that creative synergy in addition to everything else you called out to. So I'm just curious though, with that level of freedom, let's say, because I'm sure in remote settings a lot of us have kind of that level of freedom. Like, how do you strike that balance between, you know, giving team members that independence, the work, while also, you know, that collaborative efforts? And I'm sure also it probably relates to their own personal life too, or their lifestyle and stuff. So what's that balance, or how do you guys kind of work with that to make sure that everybody's happy and super productive at the same time?
So for us, or for me anyway, because, you know, the way that I lead might be a little bit different than the way that the other leads lead, and that's totally cool. So I won't speak for any of them, but I think that things that have been really successful for me in terms of working with my team remotely is to constantly be talking. And so we're in our group chat on Slack, and, you know, it's a small team, so it makes it a little bit easier, but we're constantly talking to each other. We're constantly one thing that's important to remember is that when you're working remotely too, like when you're with your coworkers on a chat or a voice chat or anything, that's our social time, right? Like we don't have the walking over to the desk or chatting at the coffee machine social time. We have just like general social time. Like every time we talk in the group chat or on a call, that's us being social. And so that's really important, even if you're not a super social person like myself, a very introverted person. You really need to be talking with your team all the time. You need to be, hey, what do you guys think about this? Does this shot look good? I'll send screenshots all the time of like, am I crazy? Does this look off somehow? And then, you know, Fatty or Brendan or Katrina chime in like, yeah, or Kyler chimes in, you know, I think it could be a little bit more like this, or I think if you could try this color instead, you know, just little things like that go a long, long way, because I think that when you work remotely and you work very independently, even if you're not working remotely, if you're working very independently, and for a video editor, often it's like we're headphones on, hands on keyboard, like, and I'll get into the zone, man. Like no one, like there could be a hurricane going on outside and I am not paying attention because I am editing, I am busy. You get really like siloed and stuck in your bubble, and you're never going to see all the same things that someone else sees. So you need to make sure that other people's eyes are on your work all the time. It's just part of it. You know, we're not going to, if we're staring at one thing forever, we're not going to see the details on it. We're going to be focusing on whatever we're focusing on. So constantly talking to my team is extremely important. And being really considerate of people's schedules. So we tend to schedule, like I was saying earlier, we tend to schedule our day-to-day individually. So we're looking at each other's calendars all the time. So, okay, I really need to get this idea out and talk about it. But I think Fatty is busy from, he has his like personal like focus time from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And after 2 p.m., I'm in Nova Scotia. So my days, you know, ends earlier. So I should probably talk to him about this at like 9 a.m. I should, you know, send him a message like, hey, can we just like chat for a bit about this at this time? Sure. Are you free in an hour to chat? Sure. That kind of thing. So we're constantly just being really considerate of each other's personal work time and constantly talking to each other and communicating with each other. So very important.
Yeah. So it sounds like too, I mean, I mean, even at a high, simple level, it sounds like, you know, communication is really the key there.
Communication and trust, for sure. Yeah. I think, like, especially like my coworker, so our editor, Fatty, he's very extroverted. So he likes to talk things out. So like, or just, if you have one thing that we've done in the past is he's brainstorming something, and it just really helps him specifically to think of new ideas once he knows that someone else is listening, someone else is just around. So I'll sit on a call with him in total silence, and he'll talk out loud, and write down ideas and then be like, okay, great, thanks. And I didn't even say a word, I just was there to be on the call with him, because that's just how he best comes up with ideas. So
yeah, and
just making time for each other that way is
that
important.
example, and I'm sure many other different ones too. It's just the process of listening too to others is essentially a form of empowerment as well. Knowing that you're heard, and obviously, and it could be applied in other areas where that helps with the collaborative process. So in everything else, it's just, it's just funny because it's like communication is like, if we want to simplify, is the answer right there, but you don't ever think of it as being so simple sometimes, and how, these interesting dynamic, especially with remote teams, can be with this process.
Yeah. Sometimes just hearing your idea out loud, it makes you go, oh, wait, no, I'm going to do it this other way instead. And there it is.
Yeah.
Like there's your solution, right? Like you just sometimes need to, and I'm really bad for this too. Like I like to be alone and I like to work alone. So I get into my little blinders on like all the time. And I have to like remind myself, no, you need to ask your team to look at it because you have to.
Yep, exactly. I'm the same way with stuff. I'm like, I think I know what I'm doing, but can I just run this by you real quick? And it's like, okay.
Yeah.
Yep. So
absolutely.
It's always good to those sanity checks, folks. It's always good. But again, don't take them as fact.
No.
Not all. Like
everything.
Yeah.
Everything's made up. So we make it up as we go. So.
Wow. So definitely a lot that we talked about today. And I mean, I'm sure we could go on for a lot more, but all things considered, especially not just for time, but your battery's sake, could you list out like, I don't know, like a few suggestions or tips that you would recommend to our listeners today based off of our conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I've got 3 things written out here that came to mind immediately that I'm excited to share. So one, everything is made up in general. And what we do, especially in our industry, it's like such a cutting edge industry. Everything is made up. We make everything up. And making mistakes is not only okay, but necessary. So if someone tells you, like if you're explaining your process to somebody or asking a question about something and like, oh, wait, you don't know how to do that? Like, okay, well, by this time you should know this. And at this point in your career, you should know this. It's stuff like that isn't helpful. And stuff like that is not realistic either, because the way that we learn in this industry is by working together and by trying things and trial and error and making mistakes. And it's not from reading a manual of A to Z. This is how to do this thing. This is how to do this job. This is how to make this thing. Everything it comes from a collective pool of this industry full of creatives who are just discovering things and making things up as they go. So I think that just to remember that there is no standard, for most things in our industry, and to just you try some things, you ask, you let go, check your ego at the door, because you need to be collaborative and to listen and to take criticism, and just remember that if someone says the way that you work isn't the right way to work, that's not a thing. That's not a thing. So, and if you think that's a thing, rest assured it is not a thing. You find your own way, basically, in what you're doing in this industry. So
love it.
Next one would be using shortcuts, in my opinion, is working smart and not a bad thing. I think when I started working, especially when I started working in this industry and when I was in school, we had, there was some kind of elitism around doing everything from scratch. And that's not really efficient.
Nope.
Honestly. And it's not efficient. It's not realistic. And it's not going to make you stand out from, the crowd just because you grinded harder than the next guy. Grinding is out. Grinding is so 2010. We don't grind anymore. We work efficiently, and we work to what makes sense for us as creatives to be working to get the best results. So work smart, and don't be afraid to use shortcuts. And we want to not rely on them, and we want to not copy paste. We don't. I'm not saying plagiarize. We don't want to copy someone's work, but using shortcuts, finding ways like using AI, for example, to like kind of speed up your work process, to make your work process flow quicker, to make it more efficient. Absolutely do that. It's a good idea to stay on top of that. And lastly, don't take yourself too seriously, because gatekeeping sucks, and it's like archaic and dumb, and don't do it. We are game developers and game creatives. We're trying to make fun, cool stuff, and hiding that from other people that want to learn how to do the same fun, cool stuff in their own way is not conducive to a creative industry. We just, we want to share, we want to talk, we want to build, we want to get better. So don't take yourself too seriously, because yes, this is a profession and a career, but we're making cool, fun stuff. So we should have fun and be cool making it, basically.
Absolutely.
And trust each other to do that.
Love it.
Yeah.
Sorry, I got thrown off. My son's home with me today.
Oh, no worries. And my battery is telling me hold on. It says I have 32 minutes left.
Okay. We got
so we're
this.
good. Well, we got the top to bottom, so we're good to go now.
Excellent. Well, Emily, I can't thank you enough for sharing those tips, because really good ones there. And sometimes I think they're always good to revisit, even if we're aware of them. I'll admit, I forget half those things. It's like, why are you making this harder for yourself? You shouldn't have to do that. Or there's so many things
we have to remember that, like, yes, this is it's an industry full of people who are passionate and who need to be passionate to make the things that we give to people. Because when people play games, for whatever reason they're playing them, it's an interactive, fun, all-encompassing experience usually. And so you need to have a certain, it's an industry full of really creative, really passionate people. When you have passionate people, sometimes when you're really passionate about something, you want to hold on to it, and you want to keep it really close to you, and you want to, this is my thing. This is so important to me. I don't want to share it, but to see it develop and to see it move forward in the way that the world is moving forward. So such as remote work, being, more transparent in how you build things and trying to leave gatekeeping behind. It's important to do all those things. It's important to, when you're working on a remote team like mine, to trust each other. And we have to. If we don't trust each other enough to have full autonomy, where we can leave each other alone for the most part when working remote, then it can't work, right? So micromanaging isn't possible with remote work, and that's a good thing, because we need to let people just go and be and do their things and let their minds open how they naturally open, and that is how the industry takes off and grows and gets better.
Yeah. So many great things there. And it's great, because it sounds like, all this time that, Evolve has been encompassing that whole belief in system as well. And clearly it's working out well for you guys. So awesome.
Yeah.
Emily, can't thank you enough for being here today. Now, if people want to get in touch, find out more about Evolve, what are some links that you can share with us?
So our website, you can go to evolve-pr.com. You can follow us, my team specifically, evolve_OG on Twitter. And for me personally, Emily at evolve-pr.com if you want to email me specifically. But other than that, Twitter is where we spend the most. Well, okay, X. I guess I'm not calling it X. I can't get on board with X. But Twitter is where Evolve Originals spends the most time, and we're on there sharing stuff and hanging out and sharing behind the scenes stuff and our latest work and all that. So I would say that Twitter is probably the best place to get a hold of us. And that's evolve_OG.
Awesome. Well, Emily, again, can't thank you enough for being here today. And it was great having you.
It was awesome being here. And it was really nice to be social after like a 2 weeks Christmas vacation of like having my nose in a book and not talking to anyone and not doing anything. So it was great. Thank you so much for having me.
Hey everyone, thank you for listening to another episode of Indie Game Movement. I'm Andrew Pappas, your host, and the show's producer is Mustafa Price. Show notes for this episode can be found by visiting rengenmarketing.com, the number episode of the show. Rengen Marketing is a consulting marketing company that helps indie devs with their marketing efforts. Whether you need guidance with your game's marketing strategy or could use a free marketing plan template, then please visit www.rengenmarketing.com and take action. A special thanks to Dakota Saw for Season 2's opening theme and Melissa Gellis for the new logo design. And as always, thanks for being such great listeners, and we'll see you next time on Indie Game Movement.